Hello everybody, it's Non-C News here, and today we've gotten a lot of breaking dates today. And the first news we'll be talking about today is first coming from the United States of America. So first we're going to be speaking upon the economic news coming from the United States today. So, if you've been watching the Non-C News channel, you probably know that in the previous couple of days, we've been talking about how the United States has been expanding its tariff list quite a lot. So, Donald Trump has been sending many letters to many leaders of many countries around the world, informing that their country will be getting tariffed on August the 1st unless they fix their trade deficits with the United States. And the United States has added 3 major countries, one being a corporation, and 2 countries to that list. So let's just get started. So the United States will now be imposing a 30% tariff on the European Union. So starting on August the 1st. So the White House has just sent a letter to the European Commission President von der Leyen proposing a balanced trade agreement to address the US and EU trade deficit. The letter, dated on July the 11th, invites EU participation in an economic meeting between the United States and the EU and warns of a 30% tariff on EU goods if trade barriers persists. The US aims to eliminate tariffs and enhance market access with potential retaliation measures if unmet. So Donald Trump is now sending a 30% tariff to the European Union unless the EU puts down its trade barriers to the United States and removes all tariffs and blockades of US products into the European Union. So obviously, the EU has declared its readiness to take retaliation measures after the US President Donald Trump announced the introduction of the 30% tariffs on the EU goods. So according to the European Commission President von der Leyen, she stated she is ready to do the appropriate countermeasures to the American tariffs. Von der Leyen still hopes that she can make a deal with Donald Trump before August the 1st. She stated that we will take all necessary steps to protect the interests of the EU. The introduction of the 30% tariffs on exports from the EU will disrupt important transatlantic supply chains, which will harm businesses and consumers on both sides of the Atlantic, both EU, Europe, and the United States of America. So obviously, the EU is now saying that it will retaliate if a treaty and a trade treaty isn't drafted up and finalized between the United States before August the 1st, which is the United States' demand. We've also got news today that Donald Trump also slaps a 30% tariff on Mexico over fentanyl crisis and trade issues. So the White House has just announced that a 30% tariff on Mexican goods starting on August the 1st, 2025, citing Mexico's failure to stop the flow of fentanyl and address cartel activities in Mexico. The letter, which was delivered, if you can see here in the bottom left corner, was the official White House letter that was sent to the Mexican president, and this letter warns that additional tariffs may be imposed if Mexico raises its own tariffs against the United States in retaliation. The US also highlights the unsustainable trade deficit with Mexico and a national and labels the trade deficit between Mexico and the United States as a national security threat. So unlike the EU, Mexico will be tariffed 30% due to its failure to stop the flow of, I quote, fentanyl and address the cartel activities, and obviously same as the EU, trade deficits. So interesting news. And the last country on the list was Canada. So Donald Trump again has sent a letter to the Prime Minister of Canada about the introduction of 35% tariffs from August the 1st. The Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said that his government would continue to protect his country's workers and businesses as they head towards the new deadline. So In total, Canada, Mexico, and EU are the new countries that are going to be added to the sanction list. Obviously, the EU is not a country, it's a corporation, a union between European states. So, I will now read out the now total Trump tariff list. So, if you can see here in your bottom left corner, Donald Trump and the United States will be imposing a 30% tariff on Algeria, Bangladesh 35%, Bosnia-Herzegovina 30%, Brazil 50%, Brunei 25%, Cambodia 36%, Canada 35%, the EU 30%, Indonesia 32%, Iraq 30%, Japan 25%, Kazakhstan 25%, Laos 40%, Libya 30%, Malaysia 25%, Mexico 30%, Moldova 25%, Myanmar 40%, the Philippines 20%, Serbia 35%, South Africa 30%, South Korea 25%, Sri Lanka 30%, Thailand 36%, and Tunisia 25%. So that is the total countries that will be tariffed by the United States if trade disagreements are not resolved until the deadline on August the 1st. So, very interesting news. But it seems that another country might be headed on this list of the Trump tariff nations, and that country is the Russian Federation. So, we've just gotten some news today that while recording this video, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and the head of NATO, Mark Rutte, are currently holding strategic meetings in the Oval Office in the White House, and Donald Trump has made some breaking news today. So, Donald Trump has just announced that the United States will be imposing a 100% tariff duty on Russia and its trading partners if Russia and the United States and Ukraine do not reach a peace settlement on Ukraine within the next 50 days. So again, the US will impose secondary sanctions and tariffs on Russia and its trading partners if there is no deal on Ukraine within approximately 50 days. So, Donald Trump will be announcing 100% tariffs on Russia's key energy energy trading partners. So, obviously, China and India buy probably one of the biggest, largest of loads of Russian oil. And if Russia doesn't settle its war in Ukraine with Ukraine and the United States within 50 days, both India, China, and many other countries that buy Russian energy products will be facing a 100% tariff. So obviously, these tariffs are meant to paralyze the Russian revenue on its oil and try and stop the war in Ukraine. So, additionally, besides the tariffs, the United States President Donald Trump and the head of NATO made further comments on Ukraine and the future of Ukraine. So, Donald Trump stated that he's very dissatisfied with Russia's position on Ukraine. According to the US and NATO have reached an agreement on supplying weapons to Ukraine at the expense of the Europeans. So according to Donald Trump, the Europeans will now be spending the money on US weapons for the US weapons to be delivered to Ukraine. Again, we just stated the United States will impose a 100% tariff duties on Russia and its trading partners if Russia and Washington do not reach a peace agreement on Ukraine. Trump has also stated that he's disappointed in President Putin because he thought he would have a peace agreement in Ukraine with him 2 months ago. According to Donald Trump, 17 Patriot systems are being prepared for shipment to Europe. Not to Europe, to Ukraine. Many of these systems will be on the battlefield in Ukraine, Trump stated. So Trump has announced that 17 Patriot systems will be delivered to Ukraine. For an example, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, stated that 12 Patriot systems will be sufficient enough to shoot down enough Russian missiles that it practically wouldn't really do anything to Ukraine. It wouldn't be the Russians wouldn't be able to reach their goals in their missile attacks in Ukraine. So Donald Trump has announced that he will be sending 17 Patriot systems to Ukraine, and many of these systems will be delivered within the next couple of days. So not in the next couple months, in the next couple days. Because Poland, Romania, and many other NATO countries that hold the Patriot anti-air system will be delivering their Patriot systems to Ukraine, and later obviously Poland's and Romania's Patriot systems will be replaced with brand new American ones. So very interesting news. So that is practically the news I've gotten from the American and NATO summit in the White House so far. Again, I'm recording this at the time of the meeting, so not all the news has came out right yet. And sorry, but before we continue with the next subjects today, just again recording this, I am looking at some more news that apparently on July the 3rd, between a call between the Russian President Vladimir Putin and the President of the United States, according to the Politico and many other news agencies and Donald Trump himself, Putin told Trump that he plans to escalate attacks and a push towards full control of the key Ukrainian regions within 60 days. And now Trump is now giving him 50 days before the new sanctions start. So according to Putin, in one of his most recent calls with Donald Trump, Putin plans to actually capture the 4 Ukrainian oblasts, which is the Zaporozhian Oblast, Kherson Oblast, the Donetsk Oblast, and the Luhansk Oblast within 60 days. But now Trump is now giving him 50 days before new sanctions are now being pushed forwards. And furthermore, I promise you the last news from this topic is that, according to many news agencies, the US is going to be selling approximately $10 billion in weapons to NATO, which ultimately will be bound for Ukraine. And according to news, this is going to be the first wave. So, if this war doesn't settle in 50 days, the US is going to be giving Ukraine a lot of military equipment. So according to the latest news we've got, the US is going to be sending $10 billion to NATO, which NATO will be delivering to Ukraine, and this is going to be the first wave. And again, the United States isn't just giving this $10 million worth of military equipment away. The Europeans are buying all of this military equipment and then giving it to Ukraine. So the US is making a profit from this. Let's just get on to the next news we've gotten today. And that next news is coming from the People's Republic of China and Taiwan. So again, in the previous video, we talked about how Taiwan launches its historic Hangguang 41 military drill. It is Taiwan's largest ever military exercise. It began on the early days of July 2025. And will be expanding and will be spanning for 10 days, with a record of 22 reservists, featuring also the first ever live fire of the use of the M1 A2T Abrams tanks and HIMARS systems. So if you can see here in the bottom left corner, we've gotten some videos of Taiwan's latest military drills, which again is featuring the first ever live fire use of American A1 A2T Abrams tanks and also HIMARS missile systems. So these drills simulate attacks on critical infrastructure and grey zones threats from China. So again, if you can see here in the bottom left corner, we can see the drills of the Taiwanese army and its missile force and air force conducting military exercises in a preparation on a potential amphibious assault on Taiwan by the People's Republic of China. So the Ministry of Defense of Taiwan stated that the military exercise will involve frequent troop movements across the street streets and beaches and airspace throughout Taiwan's island. Operations will occur day and night, potentially causing transportation disruptions and conveniences in everyday life. On the first day, the Taiwanese military conducted urban combat at close quarters combat training for reserve forces. And obviously, as we stated, during the drills, the Taiwanese forces also held their first ever live fire of the use of A1, A2 Abrams tanks and the HIMARS missile systems. So, very interesting news. And while Taiwan is obviously conducting its military exercises, simulating a defense plan and urban fighting in Taiwan in a potential amphibious attack from the People's Republic of China. Sorry, I can't speak today. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. But while Taiwan is hosting its military exercises, China is also doing its own, because if you can see here in the bottom left corner, as Taiwan holds its largest ever Hangguang military exercises, with this year's focus on fighting a land invasion, China has also begun holding military drills in Fujian. So you can see here in the bottom left corner, China has just now been practicing amphibious landings. So you can see here in the bottom left corner, we can see these amphibious tank vehicles conducting military exercises adjacent to the Taiwan Strait. So just adjacent to Taiwan, China is holding these military exercises. Obviously, China's doing this because Taiwan is holding its biggest military exercise. We've also got news that the Pentagon is now urging both Japan and now Australia to clarify their role in a potential US and China conflict over Taiwan as tensions rise in the Indo-Pacific region. So the Pentagon is obviously seeing these recent military exercises on both sides, and now the Pentagon is now wanting Australia and Japan to clarify their roles in a potential US and Chinese conflict over Taiwan. So very big news. The next news we'll be talking about today is coming from Russia, and more specifically coming from the recent Russian foreign ministers meeting in North Korea. So the Russian foreign minister Lavrov landed in North Korea just very recently, yesterday, to meet with the supreme leader of North Korea, and that is Kim Jong-un. So, if you can see here in the bottom left corner, the two officials met in Pyongyang, the capital city of North Korea. And here are the Russian foreign minister's key points following his strategic dialogue meeting with North Korea. So, the Russian foreign minister Sergei Lavrov stated that cooperation between Russia and North Korea stabilizes the situation on the Korean Peninsula. Moscow and Pyongyang considers attempts to create NATO infrastructure in Northeast Asia dangerous and agrees on the need to establish reliable mechanisms to ensure equal and invincible security in Asia-Pacific region. Putin and Kim Jong-un are in constant contact, and high-level meetings between Russia and the North Korea will certainly take place, with dates to be agreed upon. Russia and the North Korea plan to resume maritime communication. Moscow understands the reasons why North Korea is developing its nuclear program and respects North Korea's position. No one is ever even considering using force against North Korea, although the US and South Korea and Japan are conducting military buildups around it. Moscow warns Washington, the US, South Korea and Japan against abusing their alliance ties, and Russia does not take seriously the attempts to create a multinational force corps to defend Ukraine, calling them fantasies. So, very interesting news. We've also gotten some more statements coming from the Russian foreign minister. So, following his meeting with Lavrov, Kim Jong-un expressed his unconditional support for Russia's actions in Ukraine. Russia's foreign minister held bilateral talks in North Korea with the country's leader Kim Jong-un and its foreign minister. North Korea framed the meeting as a strategic dialogue, after which North Korea's foreign minister and Lavrov signed a 2026 to 2027 exchange plan. Media does not actually disclose the contents of the agreements between Russia and North Korea. After the meeting, Kim Jong-un stated that North Korea is ready to unconditionally support all measures taken by the Russian leadership to eradicate the root cause of the Ukrainian conflict. So, very big words coming from Kim Jong-un there. And obviously, we can probably see within the next months or weeks, huge shipments of North Korean weaponry, ammunition being delivered to Russia. According to Ukraine's intelligence chief, Bogdanov, he says that North Korea supplies up to 40% of Russia's ammunition now, and according to South Korean intelligence, North Korea has supplied Russia with over 12 million 152mm artillery shells, according to South Korean intelligence, as reported by Yohab News. This involved approximately 28,000 containers filled to the brim with weapons and munitions. According to, again, South Korean intelligence, in April, Reuters reported that North Korea had already sent up to 6 million shells to Russia. Without this supply, Russia would not be able to wage the war in Ukraine in such intensity. We've gotten some more further news today coming from Russia. Wow, this is becoming a long video, but we've got a lot of news to go over. We've got news that Russia's only aircraft carrier, Admiral Kuznetsov, may soon be scrapped after years of stalled repairs and a serious accidents. So, the warship and Russia's only aircraft carrier was commissioned in the early 1990s and has been under repair since 2017, but remains incomplete. A major fire in 2019 has repeated delays after plagued the efforts, and sources say that work on the aircraft carrier was quietly halted some time ago. A final decision on whether to continue or dismantle it is expected soon from Russia's Navy and United Shipping Building Corporation. If scrapped, Russia will be left without any aircraft carrier. So, very interesting news. The next news we've got today is coming from Estonia. We've got news that as tensions between the Russian Federation and NATO in the Baltic states continue to grow, the Estonian Defense Forces has announced that they have conducted their first ever live fire exercises with the M142 HIMARS systems purchased from the United States. In total, Estonia has acquired 6 HIMARS launchers from the United States. We've also got news today that France has vowed that it will be doubling its defense spending years ahead of schedule, Macron stated, the president of France. So France announced that 64 billion euros will be handed to the French army in 2026, effectively doubling the French military spending. So France will be doubling its military spending. We've also got some news coming today, coming from the Middle East. That's the Syrian interim president Ahmed al-Shara pays his first official visit to Azerbaijan following Azerbaijan's recent offer to supply Syria with natural gas. So, the president of Syria arrived in the capital city of Azerbaijan, and with the Syrian president's visit to Azerbaijan, Azerbaijan and Syria's government signed a major energy cooperation agreement. So the state company of the Republic of Azerbaijan, Sokar, which I'm not talking about the American version, how you say football, has just signed a memorandum of understanding with the government of the Syrian Arab Republic, paving the way for enhanced cooperation in the energy sector. This landmark agreement aims to bolster energy initiatives, potentially including natural gas and electricity supply, as parts of Syria's reconstruction efforts continue. The next news we've got today is coming from Israel. So we've got news that according to the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, he says that he is ready for a permanent end to the war in Gaza. So his demands from Israel's stance is Hamas has to lay down its weapons, Gaza has to be demilitarized, and Hamas has to be left with no governing and military capabilities. So Hamas's response to this, Hamas is apparently expressed readiness to negotiate with Israel, but Hamas's key demands for peace in Gaza is the end to the Israeli occupation of Gaza, unrestricted humanitarian access, and assurances for a long-term peace agreement. So, interesting news. And the next news we've got today is coming from Mali, this African country here. So we've got news that Mali's interim president has just signed a controversial law granting himself renewable 5-year presidential terms without elections, potentially extending his rule indefinitely. So the move, approved by the transitional parliament, has sparked concerns over democratic backsliding in the West African nations. So Mali's interim president signed a law granting himself a renewable 5 years of presidential term without elections. And obviously a lot of people around the world are saying that obviously he's not going to hold elections, and this could very well become a dictatorship where he will be controlling Mali until he dies or gets thrown out. So very interesting news there. And sorry, the last news we've got on today is coming from Afghanistan, which I forgot to put on the map. So we've got news that Soviet equipment are being repaired by the Taliban from captured depots. So in this footage here in the bottom left corner, we can see dozens of restored Soviet armoured vehicles are shown, including BMP-1 infantry fighting vehicles, T-55 and T-62 main battle tanks, and multiple rocket launcher systems. So obviously following the Taliban takeover, they gained access to numerous depots filled with obviously American and obviously old Soviet military equipment. The militants have been since refurbishing these military equipment and now adding it to their army. So ever since the Taliban took control, they've obviously captured the leftover and lefted American equipment, modernized American equipment, which Donald Trump calls the best in the world. But the Taliban has also now controls obviously vast depots of Soviet era equipment. Obviously the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, so the Taliban have now controlled these vast amount of old Soviet equipment, and according to the recent news, they're refurbishing these, and now they're going to be putting this in the army. So that's all the news I actually have for you today. I am non-scene news. I'll try and provide you news that medias around the world do not show you. I do these videos hopefully daily, and please consider liking, subscribing. I know we've been getting a lot of new subscribers in the past couple of days. Thank you very much for the new people who have been subscribing and liking the videos. So we're just going to keep that track going, you know. Let's just keep that train going. But if you want to support the channel, if you want to support the channel and me personally, please consider donating in the link in the description below, either donating via PayPal or becoming a member of the channel. So again, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all later. Bye.